And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be nominal.
RCPA chamber pressure looks good.
Probably not. Roger, planet.
Water power supply! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Fighting downside SPD off. Bring in SPD off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
What is it?
Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
If there's methane, it'll be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. Keep red. Sure. We don't need any more of these.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to SpaceX's third of 4 launches in this 2-day period. This is the GSAT-N2 mission, also sometimes called GSAT-20, a launch for an Indian satellite that got moved off of one of India's vehicles onto Falcon 9. I see all the 5x5s in chat. Thank you very much for that. I'll be your host for today's mission. I am Trevor Sesnick, a writer here at NSF. But thankfully, I am not alone today, as always. Joining me is the all-knowledgeable Alejandro. Alex, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Man, another launch, right? These are coming and they don't stop. It seems like. I don't know, it's crazy.
Yeah, and then we will also have Sawyer joining us soon with better live views and his commentary, but he was delayed a few minutes and we figured we'd go live to just talk about all of the cool stuff SpaceX has been doing. And then in the background, we have Carson producing today's stream. But with that, Alex, can you just give us a rundown of what today's mission is, where it'll be landing, all of the goodies?
Yeah, so this is, as you were mentioning, a satellite for India. This is part of their own constellation of satellites from the government side of things. So this is GSAT-20, also known as GSAT-N2, I think it is the other name that it receives. There's also another name, bit less used, which is CMS-03. But yeah, it's just essentially, another one of these government satellites for their own communication services, delivering high-speed communications to a lot of people down in India. Now, the reason why it is launching on a Falcon 9, as you were mentioning, is because India's own rocket, the highest performance rocket, unfortunately cannot throw this satellite to a geostationary orbit. It's a big one, and it is also not the first time that they have launched these bigger satellites on other rockets. For example, the previous one, GSAT-24, that launched an Ariane 5 rocket way back when, right? A few years ago before it was retired. And, it's very common for them to, when they build these bigger satellites, which they cannot launch on their own, then they go to, friendly countries, and then these are launched on those other rockets. And so in this case, this one, it's just a little bit heavier than they can launch with their launch vehicle Mark III rocket. It is 4,700 kilograms or 4.7 metric tons. And the rocket launch vehicle Mark III can only launch 4.3 metric tons. So for 400 kilograms, essentially, they cannot be able, they are not able to launch this into a geostationary transfer orbit. In the future, though, they're working on upgrades to that rocket where they'll be able to launch these bigger satellites and even much larger satellites, like 5-6 ton range into a geostationary transfer orbit. But while they're working on that, gotta launch the satellites. So SpaceX is right here available for that. And so, as you look at the whole panorama, why did they choose SpaceX, right? As I was mentioning, this is another launch. We had already one yesterday from the Cape. They launched in the meantime another one from Vandenberg, and today another one here from the Cape again. tomorrow Starship, right? And then another 2 more missions later down the line as well. One from the Cape, one from Vandenberg. They're launching essentially every 2 days, even 1.5 days in between launches on average. And so they are very available. That's the whole reason why it is launching on a Falcon 9. They were trying to get this satellite early on an Ariane 6, but Ariane 6 delayed. So because it delayed, India said, we're going to launch in our Falcon 9. It's launching a lot. It's cheap. We can afford that. So let's put it there. And so, that's the whole history why we are right here, right now, 1 hour from a launch of these communication satellites from India on a Falcon 9 rocket. Again, working on their own upgrades for their own launchers. And I see there's a bunch of people already in chat from India. So, looking forward to that. And, all the exciting things coming out from there, like, Gaganyaan and all of that. I cannot wait until, they have a lot of ambition lately. So,
Yeah, the ISRO in general, they're doing remarkable stuff with their very limited budget. Like, I think their yearly budget is like something like a tenth of what NASA's is, and they're doing a lot. It's been cool to watch. But with that, we'll go to some questions. As always, if you have any questions, make sure you tag us in chat with that at NASA Spaceflight, and we will do our best to answer them. But I think it wouldn't be a Falcon 9 launch stream without Alex and I talking about the cadence that SpaceX is at. Because, right, last night, you saw SpaceX break the turnaround record of Slick 40 and, of course, I Still Love You. That was a turnaround record of 4 days, 30 minutes, and 30 seconds, which beat the previous turnaround record of Slick 4 East by about 12 or 11 and a half hours. So this just goes to show that, right, as SpaceX is trying to launch every other day for the rest of the year, we're going to be seeing more and more launches out of Vandenberg and more launches out of the Cape. And on that note, today's mission, GSAT-20, is setting a few more turnaround records. This will be the fastest turnaround of Just Read the Instructions at 4 days, 5 hours, and 10 minutes, which is about 12 hours less than the previous record. And then additionally, this will be the fastest turnaround of B1073, 25 days and 20 hours and 44 minutes, beating that record by about 8 days. So lots of turnaround records being broken. And I think that we're going to keep seeing a lot of these turnaround records be broken as SpaceX continues to push really, really hard for 136 launches by the end of the year, not including Starship.
and correct me if I'm wrong, Trevor, but this will also be a record turnaround time for the pad for a customer mission, because all of the previous records were between Starlink, or at least prior to a Starlink mission, right? Like the record was either between 2 Starlinks or a customer mission and a Starlink,
Right.
instead of being Starlink to a customer mission. And so this will be the shortest turnaround time ahead of a customer mission, essentially, which is, if I'm not mistaken, should be 4 days, 5 hours, and 9 minutes. So yeah, and the shortest prior to that, I think I was looking here through the turnaround times essentially, and it might have been actually from the West Coast with the USSF 62 mission, with 4 days and 12 hours. So quite interesting. It's trying to steal that out of Vandenberg, that record.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Interesting. I did not have that stat on my bingo card.
But and one of the important things why this matters is because, when it's a Starlink, they can fast track things, so to speak, right? But when they have a customer mission, they sometimes take a little bit more. They try to ensure that, especially turnaround times and whatnot, are within check, all of the checkouts and everything, the refurbishment and everything. And also, when they bring these payloads, for example, GSAT-20 was apparently, from what we saw out there on social media, it looks like it was there's like different places for these payloads to be processed. So SpaceX has its own payload processing facility within the Cape. Then there's the Hangar X2 at KSC, where they do the integration for Starlink satellites on fairings, but they also have for certain payloads outside of the Cape and outside of KSC, there's in Titusville the Astrotech facility. So apparently GSAT-20 was processed there and encapsulated on its fairing right there, and it took a while to get to the pad. So like usually those kinds of things tend to also take into account, and the whole deal. It's like 40. One of the problems that it has is that it can only fit one rocket at a time. So whenever they launch and they roll out a booster and a second stage out, they normally try to get already the next fairing and rocket ready to go
Hmm.
to be able to be rolled out, because they cannot fit two, right? It's not like 39A where if they wanted to, they could roll like even 3 or 4 complete Falcon 9 rockets and it will fit within the hangar. They cannot do that at Slick 40, unfortunately.
Yeah, 39A's hangar is huge.
Yep.
Yeah. And the last thing I don't think we have covered yet is the weather. As you can see, it's a bit cloudy out there today. However, this does not seem like it will pose any problems for launch. Here's the 45th Space Wing's weather forecast, with weather being over 95% go for launch, and all of those additional risk criteria are low. In the event that they are unable to go today, there is a backup launch opportunity 24 hours later. Please,
Well,
SpaceX, go today. We don't want to do this during Starship.
technically not 24 hours later. It will be at 4:33 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. So it will be more like 15 hours later.
Okay.
Yeah, it will be in the middle of the night.
Still, please, SpaceX, just launch now so that we can focus on Starship tomorrow.
Yeah, please. Hopefully that weather, as you can see, right? You were mentioning greater than 95% chance of favorable weather. So that's good. That's what we want.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so Alex, I know we've been talking about this for months, and I'm curious now what your opinion is. How many launches do you think SpaceX is going to reach this year, and what is your estimate for next year?
Oh dear. They're
And
targeting
let's include Starship
136.
in both of these, by the way. So,
Oh boy. Okay, well, I'm gonna do my breakdown, sort of like with and without Starship, because that's how they do it. They do it without, and so I'll do the SpaceX way and then my way. So the SpaceX way, they originally targeted 144 plus 4 that they didn't do last year, right? So 148. Unfortunately, because they had a few setbacks, they had these groundings, they were not able to get there. But they're trying to get very, very close, which is 136 is the new target. Right now, if they keep this cadence, they will arrive to 130 with this kind of cadence. If they are able to ramp up even more, which they want, they will be able to achieve those 136 launches before the end of the year. Right now, they are at 114. This will be the 115th of the Falcon family of rockets. Now, with Starship, they have already done 3. Tomorrow, hopefully, we're going to get the 4th of the year. So that will be a total of 140 launches by SpaceX by the end of the year. Next year, I think they have a good chance of being able to do between 180 and 200 launches with the Falcon family. And they actually have hinted at, trying to get even more launches with Kiko Donchev. He was saying things like, with the current fleet of drone ships, we can do already like well over 220 launches with what we have. And that's not even adding RTLS and everything. And so I think there's a good chance that they may try to target 200, maybe falling short of that eventually, and maybe having 190 or something like that. But I mean, falling short of 200, like, right?
yeah.
That sounds even outrageous to say when that's pretty much how many launches there've been worldwide so far, right? That's a lot of launches. And then from Starship's point of view, they want to launch 25 times next year, which I'm not
That's
too
not
positive
happening.
of. Yeah, I'm gonna say not to say that they're not gonna be up in their cadence. I do think we're gonna see double digits, probably 10 to 12, and that will still be like more than doubling, nearly tripling their cadence from this year, right? Like they're on track to launch 4 times Starship if tomorrow goes on time and everything. We're not expecting a 1.5 month delay. That's for sure. Um, Knock on wood. but
Yeah.
but definitely 4 launches this year, and so if they can get 12, that will be tripling their cadence with Starship, which they have never done with Falcon. They may have doubled, and that's happened in a few of these past years where they've gone maybe if I'm looking here
20
carefully.
2016 to 2017,
Exactly, 2016,
2021 through
2017.
2022. Yeah.
Yeah, 2021 to 2022, that was 31
Yeah.
to 61 launches with Falcon. And as you were mentioning, 2016 to 2017, that was 8 to 18. So yeah, that's what you would expect if you were to translate Falcon 9 cadence to Starship, that maybe they will do 8 or 9 launches next year. So I'm saying something even better than that, perhaps next year for Starship, 10 to 12. 25 launches, that would be more than 5 times, right? More than 6
Yeah.
actually. So
Yeah.
that will be quite the upgrade on the cadence. We'll see.
So my personal bet right now is if you kind of extrapolate this current launch cadence, you're looking at about 138 total launches this year, Falcon and Starship. So 134 Falcon and 4 Starship. Um, and I think that seems pretty reasonable to me. And then if you continue that extrapolation, I'm estimating about 175 next year, which I think is probably a little on the low side. I suspect that's probably going to be a bit closer to 200, especially given Starship hopefully ramping up. So that's what the math says. But no matter what, next year is going to be a very exciting year. And with that, um, oh, there was a question in chat earlier. Oh yeah, here it is. I'm from India, residing in Albuquerque. I am pumped to watch Starship's sixth mission tomorrow, but won't be able to watch it in person. Do you think February is a good time for Starship Flight 7? So, Alex, if they're targeting 25 next year, when do you think Flight 7 is going to happen?
Uh, well, if they were targeting 25, they would probably be like, yeah, I don't know, January 4th, right? For Flight 7. But I think it's probably realistic to expect that perhaps in the February timeframe. It's a new block, right, of the ship. They probably want to introduce all of the lessons learned as well from this flight tomorrow. So hopefully we get to see some of those upgrades and changes over the next couple of months. But I think February is a good chance for Flight 7. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think January seems a bit too early, March seems a bit too late, so um, going over some support real quick, Rudy became a Pad Red member, Rough Cut Farm became a Red Team member, uh, Crab became a Pad Red member, Nerd gifted 5 Red Team memberships, Tomas became a Capcom member. Welcome to our Discord. Make sure you say hello to all of us. Jack gifted 5 Red Team memberships. Uh, Christopher said something in French. I will not offend all of the French by trying to pronounce that with my 2 years of high school French. Iron Man became a Red Team member, as did Graham, and Snot Garden gifted 5 Red Team memberships. Thank you all very much for gifting those memberships. If you got any of those gifted, make sure you thank them in chat too, and check out all of the cool member perks. Gary with the super chat saying nothing, and then Snot Garden saying, thanks, tireless NSF crew, for all the coverage. Question for Trevor: what would be the best Taylor song to listen to during launch? Ooh, that's hard. Hmm. Probably Ready for It would be like something pumpy, like from Rap. Anyway, I think we have a view from Sawyer. We do. Now that's a little bit better of a view of the vehicle. There you can see Slick 40, its crew access arm, and all of the radar equipment around it. Um, let's see, going to some more of your guys' questions. Um, here's an interesting one from Greg Alex, who's wondering if Falcon 9 can deliver 24 Starlink satellites with a drone ship landing. How many could they deliver to the same orbit with RTLS? And then wondering, is drone ship worth it?
Probably about 15, 16 Starlink satellites. That's my guess. That's always been sort of my guess. With RTLS, maybe 17 if they squeeze the performance out of the rocket. You know, one of the things that they've tried to do instead of having to defer and go to an RTLS, it's try to speed up the transit time of the drone ships and also reduce the amount of time that the drone ships need to be in port. So nowadays, if you go to port, the most likely scenario that you'll see there is that there's not going to be any ship out there because every single one of them is out there at sea supporting, you know, fail recovery, drone ship, booster landing, right? So it it's pretty much what they've been trying to do, not having to rely on RTLS to be able to up the cadence. And it seems like it's working so far. They've been, you know, one of the other sort of advantages, so to speak, right, is that they can then do in between these drone ship landings a bunch of RTLS missions. They've done that this month, for example, where they had CRS-31, right, and then they had KoreaSat-6A, and these, yeah, and so they had these sort of different drone ship missions, and then in between they put a couple of RTLS missions, and that allows them to be able to up their cadence, right? Because you're launching more without needing to use the drone ships even more. Still, as Trevor was saying, they still broke a record turnaround time for. Of course, I still love you from the West Coast, but from the West Coast they have the advantage also that they don't need to return all the way to, like, the port is not at the launch site. The port is at Long Beach, and that transit time from Long Beach to Vandenberg, you can save on that, which is about a day. So it is about as far downrange as it is here on the East Coast, but there the transit time is about a day, maybe day and a half tops, whereas here is about 2 days. Day and a half is like the minimum. Minimum for the West Coast is a lot shorter of the transit time between landing location and the port. So they can reduce that time a lot more if they wanted to.
Yeah, but still it's crazy how much faster they've been going with these drone ships this year. So I think it was ASOG that had a turnaround time of what, like 2 days and 12 hours or something, or 3 days and 12 hours between I think it was Starlink Group 664. And I think if you would have told that to Alex and I at the start of the year before they got the Signet Warhorse tugs to get the drone ship out as fast as possible, we would have been like, nah, that they're not going that fast. Anyway, a quick question from Linda, who's wondering what's the trajectory for this mission? And Alex, I think we have a handy dandy little graphic.
Indeed. So just like yesterday, if you were around for the Optus X mission, or TD7 as they called it, that was also to geostationary transfer orbit. And I said, tomorrow is going to be another one going to geostationary transfer orbit. Well, that's today's mission. It is also going to that, and therefore it's going east. So the rocket will head out east. The booster will be landing outside, out there in the ocean on just read the instructions as usual. The fairings will parachute down to a splashdown and be recovered by Bob. And the second stage will do its usual two burn profile, where it does first it goes to a parking orbit, low Earth orbit, and then about 20-25 minutes after liftoff, then it does another burn to put the satellite into a geostationary transfer orbit. Then deploys the satellite and it stays there. We had yesterday this whole discussion of whether it deorbits or not. It is not deorbiting today. Either that is only done for low Earth orbit missions or missions to a high orbit where they actually are able to do that. But for this mission, they will not be able to do that. There's no, if they were to do that though, we will know because there are usually re-entry locations for these like hazard zones that they notices that are published to be able to avoid rocket hardware being dumped into people in the ocean essentially or flying around that location.
Yeah. And this chart, while we have it up, actually lets us answer another question from Ince Morse, who's wondering what kind of distance do the ships cover for the turnaround? So you can see that blue pin is the ASDS location, so that's where it lands on. And that's about 630 kilometers downrange. And then that green pin is the fairing recovery, which is about 750 kilometers downrange. So they have to, it's about a 1.5, 2 day journey for the fairings and the booster to get back to port. And then, of course, we see that port operations, and then they eventually do the refurbishment for in Hangar X. So good question. But with that, I think we have the man himself who is bringing us these live views joining us. Sawyer, how's it going?
It is going pretty good. It is a nice light breezy day, not super hot, not super sunny, which does mean a very low cloud layer. So not sure how long we'll have views, but boy, should it sound fantastic.
Yeah, low clouds are not good for views, but really good for sound. And I think sound is generally really cool from this location because you also have a bit of the reflection from the payload processing facility and whatnot. So we'll
Yeah,
definitely,
right along the water and all of that. It's great. And I mean, it's nothing compared to Starship, which there's a great article on NASAspaceflight.com about the sounds of launches. But I mean, it's still going to put on quite a show.
yeah. Speaking of shows, we will hopefully be seeing the show of propellant load soon. Sawyer, can you walk us through what we're expecting to see and when we'll get confirmation and all the goodies around that?
Absolutely. We should hopefully be getting confirmation in the next couple of minutes that they are go for loading up the payload, loading up the fuel, the propellants. If so, then that would start at T-minus 35 minutes, where they will load the RP-1, the rocket propellant 1, and the LOX, liquid oxygen, into the first stage booster. That's also when they will start loading RP-1 into the second stage. They don't begin loading liquid oxygen until about T-minus 16 minutes. But you'll know that RP-1 load is done with the famous T-minus 20-minute, 20-second best vent.
Yes, and it is T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds on this pad, unlike 39A yesterday, where it's earlier for reasons we don't know, which is annoying, but
Because
whatever.
SpaceX.
Yeah, because SpaceX. They just wanted to confuse Alex. Let's see. Ethereal Swordsman with the super chat saying, and so I arrive, like news of a 3 a.m. Starlink upon an unsuspecting NSF crew. I am chat's master of mayhem, the inducer of insanity, and I am Ethereal. Remember the name well. Thank you, Ethereal Swordsman. Welcome to the stream. Hopefully, y'all enjoyed today's launch. Let's see. Here's a question that I would love to know the answer to. So I'm hoping Alex has some insight into this, but Supersonic Retro Propulsion is wondering, do we have any insight as to how they choose what mission is launched from what pad?
Well, unfortunately, we don't have any insight into that process, but sometimes we can guess a little bit, mainly because of when some of these payloads are going to be available. Like, just to put an example, like if it's a Dragon mission, sometimes we know ahead of time things like when the ISS is going to be available and things like that, and so we know more or less around the time that maybe it'll launch, and whether there's a lot of, like, if it's a month, for example, where we expect a lot of missions from 39A because maybe it's a Falcon Heavy or something like that, then you can kind of guess that it might be launching from Slick 40. Sometimes the guessing on our part has to go around things like that. Just for example, today, to give an example of how we work out that stuff, we had a NOTAM for another Starlink mission from the Cape called, by the way, it's the first one of a new group. It's Group 12-1. So we'll cover that when it happens. Right now, it seems to be on the 24th. And what will happen if you look at all the turnaround times and everything, if it were from Slick 40, it will be a 2.5 day turnaround, which is not, it will not break any records, by the way, but it will be very, very low. Whereas from 39A, it will be a 6-day turnaround, which seems a lot more comfortable, in quotes there, for a turnaround time from 39A, because they have already demonstrated that multiple times. And so, for example, in that case, I would, in my own guess, that said mission is probably going to be from 39A. Will it be? I have no idea, right? But that's how we guess those things. How does a SpaceX work out all of its manifest? Good question. I have no idea either. But they probably have way more data, of course, well ahead of time. You know, things like this customer prefers X location. Like sometimes they cannot launch from 39A for certain customers. They can only launch from 40 or things like that, right? So that kind of stuff also takes into account whether there are other missions around that time and things like that. There's a bunch of different things that they need to take into account, and of course, that's all of the things that they have to, you know, to put together to choose where to launch. And of course, the I guess well before that is the orbit. Although now they can reach pretty much any orbit from Florida, sometimes they want to send some of those to Vandenberg if they can launch them from Vandenberg, because that's a lower cadence that they have from there. Here from the East Coast, they're launching a lot of times. So yeah, multiple things to choose from.
Right. Yeah, there's so much that goes into each of these missions, deciding when it can launch, what vehicle it'll launch on, what pad, what fairings, and whatnot. That is something I would love to have insight on, but I sadly do not think we are ever going to get any of that insight. And one thing I am just realizing, I don't think we have actually. Oops, we did just get confirmation from SpaceX. The
There
propellant
you go.
load is underway for today's Falcon 9 launch. Launch is targeted for 1:31 Eastern Time. So now we
Nice.
have that liquid oxygen being loaded on the first stage and RP1 being loaded on both stages. So we should start to be able to see frost. It may be a little hard with the TE in the way, but we'll try to peek through. Anyway, I was saying I don't think we've actually covered the booster on today's mission. The booster is 1073, flying for its 19th time. It started its career on Starlink Group 4-15 and then flew SES-22, 2 Starlink missions, Hikudu R, Amazon Nexus, Cirrus-27, another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Starlink missions, Bandwagon 1, and then 4 more Starlink missions. So pretty old booster in the fleet at this point, but a quick turnaround. This will actually be the fastest turnaround of this booster. The current fastest is 33.97 days, and today's will be 25.86 days. But with that, let's see. Space is wondering, let's go around the horn on this one, starting with Sawyer. Sawyer, what is your favorite orbital rocket ever?
Do you even have to ask me that question?
It's shuttle.
It's Space Shuttle, absolutely 100%. Did it live up to its full potential? No. But was it the precursor to everything that we kind of know today? I mean, you've got the reusable vehicle concept, you've got the heat shield thermal tiles, you've got a lot of the blankets, all of the materials, the idea of landing and flying again. While it wasn't perfect, it set the stage for Falcon 9 and Starship today.
Yeah.
Plus Hubble and ISS and awesome stuff. Chandra.
Alex, I'm gonna guess you're gonna say Falcon.
No, how do you know?
Yeah, I agree
You
with
had me.
Alex.
Uh, but yeah, it's Falcon. That's my favorite rocket.
Um, let's see. Angeli is saying happy holidays, love from Angeli to Espen. I'm sorry if I butchered all of your guys' names, but thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the merch that you got from the store. Let's see. One of the Christmas sweaters. What was the both Christmas sweaters? Very nice. Just a reminder, the last day to order those before guaranteed delivery by Christmas is coming up. Um, let's see. Wirtz is wondering, what's the advantage of having 4 landing legs instead of 3? It seems like it would save weight and not significantly affect the supporting area. Alex, why 4 landing legs?
Well, it's more stable if you if you have the 4 legs instead of the 3. Other people, like for example, I believe Stoke is proposing their own orbital rocket Nova to have only 3 landing legs. Then you have the other extreme where New Glenn has 6 of them, but they are a little bit shorter each one of them. If you have 3, you kind of need larger landing legs so that they have a bit more area. And I believe Jeff Bezos actually talked about this on the tour that Tim did of Blue Origin there at KC, where he talked about you kind of what you will see is that if you increase the number of legs, it doesn't substantially change much. But if you are 3 to 4, it's a big change. 4 to 5, it's a smaller change. 5 to 6 is an even smaller. In their case, it was because of the symmetry of the rocket. 3 landing legs to 4 landing legs, it is much more substantial. You save some weight, but not entirely, because the landing leg needs to be larger to compensate for so that it supports the same area at the same time. I don't know. It's just a choice of design. At the end of the day, it's a trade-off. Some people like more legs, some others like fewer legs. If you remember, for example, from the hops that Starship did, they also put very small legs, but there were 6 on them, and it was probably mostly down to the symmetry, because there were Starship is very prone to 6 side symmetry, and so yeah. And there you can see, apart from a lot of birds, if you look to the actual rocket through the Stromback, there's already some frost on Falcon 9, so that's good.
Awesome. Yeah, a lot of the engineering decisions of Falcon are right. They had a vehicle that they made reusable. So 4 legs just happen to work best with the symmetry of the rocket and whatnot. But that said, there are other parts of the rocket where they get away with just 3. For example, the pusher system. There are 3 pushers radially on the outside of the rocket, and then there's just that one center one. So there still are 4 pushers, but like radially, there are only 3. Good question. Sawyer, a bunch of people in chat are wondering what the white spheres are.
I believe we're talking about the radar domes towards the left side of the screen, right?
Yes, the
Those,
2
yes,
massive white spheres.
those are radar domes that they have over at Pad 40. It's a lot easier to see, at least from this side. So yeah, that's mainly what those are. It's nothing more.
Yeah, I always like this view. It kind of shows a lot of the surrounding infrastructure, which I think is cool.
At least that we're allowed to show, yes.
Yeah.
Which For those who don't know, by the way, the current viewing location we're at is approximately 1.8-ish miles away from the pad.
Very cool. Yeah, sound today should be incredible with being this close. Um, let's see. John is wondering, can a Starship lift a fully loaded Falcon 9 second stage, I assume in the payload bay? Like, could it be used as a kick stage, Alex?
By mass, yes, but in terms of size, it will not be able to fit it on the payload bay, unfortunately. It's too long to be able to fit. It's not that it is too wide, it's just the length. It doesn't fit. But it could in terms of mass. In terms like that second stage fully loaded is about 100 tons.
Yeah, Falcon's second stage is small, but also pretty big. Yeah, let's take a closer look at the satellite that's being launched today. Here is a photo of it. I believe this was when it was preparing for, was this encapsulation? No, this can't be encapsulation. I think this is when they were shipping it, right, Alex?
Yeah, this was when they were preparing it to ship. Fortunately, not a very high resolution picture, but that's how it goes. And yeah, so that's one of the views of the satellite of the GSAT-20. Then there you can see sort of like how more or less how it will look like in deployed configuration. That they had an attached PDF along with that post on X. And so you can see there how they show the stowed configuration, the deployed configuration, and then also another picture of the satellite undergoing vibration test. So obviously, they've done their due diligence to make sure that this satellite can endure its trip to space on the Falcon 9 rocket. So hopefully we'll see that in 24 minutes from now.
Yeah, so can you walk us through kind of the process from once the satellite has been manufactured, how they get it to the Cape, encapsulated and ready for launch?
Yeah, so obviously one of the things that they need to do is ship it there. I'm not sure how they did it for this one. Different customers they do it differently. Sometimes they fly it if they can do that, right? If they are able to do that. In the case of ESA, for example, of their payloads, usually they ship it on. I believe one of the satellites that they launched was on Canopy, the one that is sailed. It has these big sails as well, right? That was cool when we saw that. They have also used the Colibris boat as well. So it sort of depends, but obviously the first deal is out of the clean room and a test facility. You put it on a transport or either a ship or a plane, and you transported there. Here at the Cape, they have multiple options. Either they can go to the Kennedy Space Center launch and landing facility, where the shuttles used to land, right? If you're carrying it on a plane, sometimes they might come to one of the other places, but it's much less likely. Some of the other um, airstrips and everything that they have around the Cape, but the launch and landing facility is more common. And if you're coming on a boat, then Port Canaveral is most of the times the place to go. Very rarely they go to Jacksonville and then they are trucked. Normally these big satellites are encapsulated in transport containers and things like that, so they are protected and in good conditions. And then once they are at the location, they are put on the adapter, on the payload adapter, and then encapsulated on the ferry. In this case, as I was saying before, it looks like it happened at Astrotech outside of the Cape. That location is at Titusville. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a pretty involved process that they have, but an important one.
Yep. Otherwise they cannot launch it.
Yeah, and that process could get interesting soon if SpaceX really does go for a vertical integration facility at 39A with the mobile service tower. I am still somewhat skeptical that that ever actually happens, but we'll see. Um, I see a few people in chat wondering if today's mission will be a stubby nozzle, and I can thankfully report no. It will be a full-size nozzle, and unlike on yesterday's Optus mission, we will be seeing stage 2 views. So we will have coverage all the way through payload deploy from SpaceX. From SpaceX.
Yep.
But with that, we are coming up to the T minus 20 minute and 20-second vent. And since you brought it up earlier, Sawyer, can you walk us through what it is, why it's important?
Sure. So as we were mentioning in terms of the fueling process, that should indicate the completion of RP1, rocket propellant 1 load, on the second stage. Now that is closer to ambient temperature than the liquid oxygen, which is a lot more super chilled. So what they need to do is they need to chill down the line and prepare it for that super cool liquid oxygen that should flow about 4 minutes after the vent. So we see the T minus 20 minute, 20-second vent there. So that means that fuel load should be done on that. And in about 4 minutes, we will hopefully see that stop, which will mean the LOX load is underway on stage 2. And just want to point out, you can really see, based on how stagnant it is there, that there is not a lot of wind and honestly not that much humidity either. So it's kind of on the less dramatic side, shall we say, today.
Right. Yeah, I always love it on these non-windy days where the vapor just kind of like sits there and just like slowly sinks. But with that, with under 20 minutes from launch, we will continue answering some of your guys' questions. John's wondering, is this launch number 3 in the last 24 hours? Yes. Yesterday, SpaceX had Optus X and then Starlink Group 9-12. Then here we are today with GSAT-N2. And then, of course, tomorrow, there is Starship Flight 6, followed by later in the week, there is Starlink 666 and 913. So there's a lot of SpaceX launches coming up, especially for the rest of the year.
And after that, it'll be Starlink 12.1. Because that'll be on Sunday, right at the end of the week.
Yeah. River Dave is wondering, which one of you has witnessed the most launches in person?
Sawyer.
I wonder, how does my 2 launches compare to Sawyer's like 80?
Now, I'm only at 62. I've got a lot of catching up to do.
Okay.
Well, when you compare it
Still,
to someone like Max or D that's here regularly, that lives on the Space Coast, versus myself who lives a little south of the Space Coast, I mean, if you're counting ones that I can watch from home, it's higher, but you don't get the sound, you don't get the rumble, you don't get the feel like you do actually up here. So it depends on how you want to count that.
Yeah, people in chat are pointing fun at your use of only in this sentence. I'm only at 62.
I mean, exclamation point Sawyer flex. Wasn't meant to be one, but yeah.
I have heard 2 launches and seen 1. So
Heard.
thank you,
Yeah, that's
Starship
pretty
Flight
good.
4. Let's
You
see,
have more
Captain
Starship
Q,
flights under your belt than I do. I can say that though.
the sound of that flight was incredible, but the views were less than stellar. Anyway, Captain Q is wondering, do you think we will hit 30 flights of a Falcon 9 booster next year? Given that they're only at 23, I think we can fairly comfortably say no. Anyone here disagree with that?
I think we will see 30 flights of a Falcon 9 booster next year. I think that's a good chance because they're already at 23, and we were talking about this yesterday. Remember, Trevor? They were able to get 9 flights out of a booster this year.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps even a 10th if they fly next month.
So I guess I should revise my answer. It really depends on
Yeah,
if they do another big analysis portion when they hit 25 flights.
exactly. So it'll depend. There's for sure a chance that we get to 25 even by January. But after that, every 5 flights, it seems like they've been taking a little bit of time out of the boosters to understand them because they want to go to 40, right? But it kind of makes sense every 5 or so flights to pause for a second, take a look at the fleet, take a look at that booster, learn from it, and improve the rest of the boosters, right? That sounds very SpaceX if you think about it. And one of the things that I heard once from Bill Gerstenmaier, the vice president of build and flight reliability at SpaceX, he said something along the lines of like, sometimes just like in a car, in order to switch gears, the RPM goes down and then you accelerate even faster, right? Like you have that switch in gears, and momentarily, for just very short amount of time, you need to slow down a bit in order to do that change in gear and go even faster than you were going before. And so we've seen that with SpaceX before, and I mean they're showing that, right? Like we had very slow-ish kind of October, but now November is going, speed of light pretty much in terms of cadence. And so there's a good chance that we might see that slowdown, but if we don't see it, then I can see Falcon 9 reaching 30 flights, some of these boosters reaching 30 flights next year without any issues. Like if they don't slow down, there's no doubt that they're going to reach that.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, actually, but there definitely is still a chance that they don't hit 30 next year. Very good question, though. 98 Central is wondering, do all boosters perform a static fire of all 9 Merlin engines after refurbishment? Sawyer, we hardly ever see static fires nowadays with Falcon.
Yeah, its next static fire is typically then followed 3 seconds later by release of the hold down clamps. Um, there's very rare exceptions where we see it. I mean, a lot of times before major crew flights, we saw it ahead of, I believe, Crew 9. They did one. Very rare occasions at this point, but I think they've got the reliability and the refurbishment down to a point that they feel comfortable enough going straight ahead with the launch, and if not, the onboard computers can stop it as needed.
Right. Yeah, I think it's mainly like crewed launches and like DoD launches that have static fires at this point, where they want to buy down as much risk as possible. Um, Going to some support real quick. Michael says, "Thank you for your coverage. New Starship patch looks awesome." Yes, Pauline did such a phenomenal job. Steven saying, "Starship Black Ta in a storm message." Let's see, what did they get? Let's see. Come on, pop up on the patch. Very nice. Then Austin getting several things from the store, saying, "Thanks for doing stickers. My dad really liked the Flight 5 patch and wanted to see it as a sticker for his cooler." Well, there you go. Jack's lobbying for all of the stickers is paying off. Um, and then Bideford, a regular here on NSF stream, is gifted 5 Red Team memberships. So thank you very much, Bideford. Thank you for always being around and just being awesome. Um, let's see. Looking for some more questions. Here's one from Matrix wondering, how does the Falcon 9 hold down or how do the Falcon hold down clamps work? Do we know how many there are and how they attach? That sounds like an Alex question if I've ever heard one.
Yeah, so they are essentially, like little grappling things that they attach, and the bottom of the booster has these sort of 4 connectors, and that's where those grappling little things connect to. So there are 4 hold down clamps on the Falcon 9, when they fly Falcon Heavy, the center core only has 2 of them, whereas the side boosters have 3. So in total, you have essentially 8, 3, 3, 2, right? And the whole reason is because the 2 older hold-on clamps on the center core are substituted by 2 sort of load bearing points for the side boosters, and then on the side boosters, one of the hold-down clamps is on those load-bearing points for the center core. And so that's essentially how it works. In order to release the rocket, those grabby things, so to speak, it's sort of like a hook kind of thing that they use that releases, and then it is able to that rocket is able to lift off. But yeah, that's how it works. It's just 4 clamps.
Right. Yeah, it's a pretty clever system they have. Fully, boy, I can never remember if it's, I think it's pneumatic, so it's fully reusable, unlike some other systems like Cygnus, where you can see the explosive bolts that, I don't know, you see the little fuse in them go off, and then the vehicle lifts off. So much
Yeah,
more reusable than that.
Yeah, some other pads use just bolts, and the rocket is just bolted to the ground interfaces, and then there are pyrotechnics that just blow those bolts, and then the rocket is released. That is not the case for Falcon 9. In the case of Starship, for example, there are clamps on the bottom of the rocket, but they are not there when the engines ignite. So those clamps are released well ahead of time. And then for liftoff, what they do is they ignite all the engines, but they are not ignited at full thrust. They are ignited sort of like a 50% thrust or something like that. And then they ramp up in power, and that's how the rocket lifts off, because the thrust becomes greater than the weight. And so the rocket just begins to lift off. But yeah.
I got 2 words for shuttle fans out there: frangible nuts. That's what
Yep.
was used for the solid rocket boosters. They would literally explode basically the bolt in half, and that would release the SRBs.
Which is not the case now for SLS, by the way. SLS is a bit like Starship in that case, where it is not bolted down for launch, because it's not side mounted, so it's a bit more symmetric. They can do that for SLS, and it just goes when the SRBs go, because it makes sense, right?
Right. But here we are, 10 minutes from launch, and somehow we are nearly a month away from Christmas. And if you want to celebrate Christmas, you can head on over to shop.nasaspaceflight.com and check out some of our Christmas sweaters. There's a dragon themed one, as you can see there. And then there's also a Starship themed one with Hoppy and a full stack on it. And then this one has Dragon, the EVA suits, and astronauts and whatnot. All very well made. So if you want those, check them out on shop.nasaspaceflight.com. But with that, as we are under 10 minutes from launch, Alex, what milestones are we coming up on?
Yeah, right now we are about a minute away from engine chill. That's when the 9 Merlin engines on the first stage get conditioned for ignition, hopefully in 8 minutes from now. We're going to have, those engines are going to have a lot of cold liquid oxygen flowing through their pumps. So those pumps get conditioned with that liquid oxygen. They flow a little bit of it so that, they are at the right temperatures for operations. After that, the RP1 load will wrap up on the first stage, and then the Stromback will retract. We'll have also the end of the liquid oxygen load on the first and second stages, and that's when propellant load will wrap up on the rocket. So, final minutes of the countdown, just getting ready for, top off the tanks, getting ready for those engines to ignite, usual stuff, clearing out the Stromback from the rocket, usual things that you should see at the final minutes of a launch countdown.
Indeed. With that, we'll go for a few more questions in these final few minutes of the countdown. Max Loves Planes is wondering, what is the busiest launch site in Europe?
Well, unfortunately, there's only one orbital launch site so far, which is the Guyana Space Center, and that is the only orbital and the busiest launch site in Europe. Soon, though, hopefully, we're gonna have a bunch more places to launch our stuff, and also a bunch more other different kinds of rockets that are not from Ariane Group, basically. But yeah, cross fingers, knock on wood, all of the good luck rituals.
And that's kind of an asterisk even on that. It's French Guiana in South America, so
It's still French territory. If you can count
Yeah.
Hawaii, we can count French Guiana.
touche.
Um, let's see. Ethereal Swordsman with the super chat saying, "Work is coming along well on the trading card game I promised Jack." I'm sure he'll be excited to hear that. Make sure you could give him an update on tomorrow's stakeout stream, since that will be going live well ahead of launch at is it 4 a.m.? Sorry, time zones have been confusing me with this all day. Yeah, it is 4 a.m. Central that we will be going live, and Jack will be on later on. So make sure you update him. I'm sure he'll be very excited. So yeah, there's that stakeout stream, and then we of course have the launch stream at 12:30 tomorrow Central Time. Boy, time zones are confusing me today. JC Davis with a super chat saying, "Will there be more Christmas options for other companies in the future, Blue Origin or Rocket Lab?" Probably. Suggest, make suggestions to Adrian and the store team, and I'm sure he'll try to make that happen. Then John with a store message saying, "Go Starship, go Flight 6." Indeed, I think that is what we are all very excited for. Um, let's see. Booster 4 is wondering, why can't SpaceX hold prop after prop load begins on Falcon 9, but on Starship they can hold? Sawyer?
Well, you're talking about these super cooled propellants here, and I mean, even Starship can only hold for about 30 minutes. But with the efficiency that they have with fueling Falcon 9, with the super chill temperatures that they have, and the rate of boil off with the Florida humidity and heat and whatnot, it really leaves minimal wiggle room. So it's easier at that point to just say you go for it instantly, or that's it, rather than trying to hold and trying to top off and potentially being just shy on propellants.
Right. Yeah, I suspect the other big advantage that Starship has is just having so much more mass of propellant. So if you compare its surface area to its total mass, the propellant will warm up way slower just because of that ratio. So
Yeah, there's a lot of propellant on Starship to heat up. So yeah.
yeah. Um, and here we should be seeing soon that vent to signify that liquid oxygen load is complete. Right, Alex?
Come again?
We'll soon be seeing the vents that liquid oxygen load is complete.
Yeah, so right now the first stage RP1 load has been completed. The stroma you can see there has been retracted. Lux load should be wrapping up soon, and then on the second stage, liquid oxygen load should be still underway for about 40 seconds or so more into today's countdown. After that, we'll see, as you mentioned, the Stromback vent coming back. That'll be them clearing out all of the lines on the, and I just heard the call out, stage 1 Lux load is complete. So stage 1 is done with propellant load. 30 seconds from now, that should be the second stage. And then Falcon 9 will be loaded with propellants. Again, that vent will come back on the Stromback. So we'll see that one of the indicators that fueling has been completed on Falcon 9.
Yeah. But with that, we also need to send Sawyer off to go track the launch and get us some phenomenal tracking shots. So Sawyer, enjoy it.
Thank you. I'll do the best I can with the cloud cover, but hopefully we should get some good sound. Go Falcon, go GSAT.
Indeed, yeah. Sound we should be getting lots of today with that low cloud ceiling and the buildings around. So we'll make sure to stay quiet during that liftoff, as always, so you guys can enjoy it. But with that, we are coming up on a series of events. At T-minus 1 minute, SpaceX or Falcon 9 will enter what is known as startup, which is when the vehicle will take control of the countdown. So instead of the countdown being controlled by ground-based computers, it will be controlled by computers on the vehicle itself. And there's that vent that Alex was just talking about.
Yep.
Additionally, at T-minus 60 seconds, SpaceX will begin pressurizing the tanks for flight pressure. So obviously you want a decent amount of pressure in those tanks to make them as rigid as possible for when those 9 Merlin engines ignite at T-minus 2.7 seconds. At T-minus 45 seconds, we should be getting the launch director's go for launch. And that is the final confirmation needed for today's launch. Then at T-minus 2.7 seconds, pay attention to the base of the vehicle for
They are go
signs
for
of
launch.
ignition. Awesome. For signs of ignition, that process begins a couple seconds ahead of launch, and then the engines ramp up to full power. The vehicle does some checks before commanding those launch clamps to release at T0. Ten seconds away from all of that happening. We did also learn that the fairing half facing us is brand new, and the other one is flying for its 5th time. And there we have ignition and liftoff of the GSAT-N2 mission. Go Falcon. Again, we will remain quiet as you can enjoy the audio. And there we have it, a successful liftoff of Falcon 9 as we are now have passed through max Q, the point of maximum aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Coming up is a series of 3 events. The first will be shutdown of those 9 Merlin engines that you can now see on screen. You can see that plume expanding. That will be very shortly followed by separation of the 2 stages. As I was mentioning earlier on today's webcast, there are 4 pushers on Falcon 9 between the 2 stages. So they release some latches, and then they have the 3 radial pushers and the 1 central pusher to push those 2 stages apart. Then both stages will start following different trajectories. The first stage will follow. We'll do 2 burns to land on just read. This is just read the instructions. Sorry, yeah, just read the instructions. I wanted to double check I wasn't saying the wrong drone ship. And the second stage will begin its 6-minute long burn to that initial orbit. Very cool that you can kind of see the shadow of the plume on the clouds.
There's Miko. Stage SEP. And then back ignition. Look at that. Clean. That's some gorgeous views.
Yeah, there's that shadow. That is so cool.
As you can see, there's a lot of clouds on the ground.
Yeah.
Should be coming
Thankfully,
up
weather was
now.
good though.
Yeah, we had that launch. Should be coming up now on fairing separation in just a few seconds. Meanwhile, the booster coasting has deployed the grid fins and should be coming back for a re-entry in just a few minutes.
Yeah, and these payload fairings have a similar-ish deploy mechanism to the two stages where there are first some latches between them. There you can see them go. Those latches are commanded to release by some
Ooh, look
helium
at that.
lines. And then they have a pusher system to push the two halves apart. That pusher system is stored in one of the halves, and that half is called the active payload fairing half. And then the other one just gets pushed against, and that half is referred to as the passive half. Here we can see the first stage on the left about still going up, but should be reaching its apogee very shortly. Oh, it looks like it is still on its way up, but just barely.
Yeah, should be reaching its apogee very shortly, and then it'll start to come back down to Earth for a landing on just read the instructions.
Yeah, there it is at apogee. It is now falling back down. That will be doing 2 burns. Alex, what will those 2 burns look like?
Yeah, so up next we'll have the entry burn. That'll be a 30-second burn, more or less, where they ignite 3 engines, but it's not all the time the 3 engines. So the ignition sequence will start with just the center engine, then 2 outer engines, engines 5 and 1, and then they'll be doing that entry burn. Those 3 engines will burn for about 30 seconds or so, and then the shutdown will go in the other way. So it'll shut down those 2 outer engines and then the center engine. And so you'll see that when it starts the first engine, it'll be sort of like, hang on, is that the second stage? Maybe
It
not,
kind of
right?
looks
Because
like
it will be looking the other way. But yeah, the whole deal is that this burn allows them to be able to slow down for reentry, but also protect the rocket. For those that might have seen Super Heavy's reentry on Flight 5 of Starship, it was cooking, right? It was literally glowing red hot through reentry. It doesn't do a reentry burn. Falcon 9 does it. It also comes down faster, so it kind of needs it. So you'll see that hopefully in just 20 seconds from now, and we'll see that speed going very quickly down from 8,000 kilometers per hour.
yeah, it gets rid of a very large amount of that velocity.
And as Sawyer will say, that's fighting fire with fire.
Fighting fire with fire.
There you go.
There he is. And there's that
That's the entry
single
burn
engine, and there's
and
that
3 engines.
3.
It's interesting because you see the line, and it is not in that line where the engines are. They are opposite, but because of the interactions between the exhausts, right, it forms that line 90 degrees off.
Right.
That's down to 1 and shut down.
And there you can see that got
See
rid of
how
like
much?
3,000 kilometers an hour
Yeah, it slowed down quite a
velocity.
bit, and now it'll use its aerodynamic griffins to be able to steer itself to the drone ship. It'll not entirely go to the drone ship, as you know. It'll try to get close, but not entirely all the way. That'll be the work of the landing burn that protects the drone ship from, for whatever reason the landing burn failed, then, it will not be
Right.
having a booster crashing on it.
I always love when those grid fins start getting a little bit of control. You can kind of see a little bit of oscillation in the booster, and then their control algorithm is just so finely tuned that it gets rid of that. It dampens that oscillation crazy fast.
Yeah. And one thing that we'll see today that we didn't see on normal Starlink missions is that the MVAC engine on the right will shut down first, and then the landing will happen. That landing will be done with the center engine on the Merlin on the bottom of the booster. Instead of 3, it'll be just 1 engine, the center engine.
Indeed. Through the cloud layer, there's
There's
that
the landing
single
burn,
engine.
an MVAC shutdown. Look at that.
And there is just read the instructions. And there is a successful landing. That
Look at
is
that.
SpaceX's 371st successful landing of a Falcon booster and the 30th consecutive landing of a
That
Falcon
looks like a
booster.
bullseye.
That does look like a bullseye.
Wow. Well,
Not bad for
hopefully
Falcon's 399th flight, right?
Yeah, right? Hopefully the next landing by SpaceX is also as bullseye as that one, because that'll be Booster 13 tomorrow.
Yeah, and there we have live views of second stage in orbit. Again, this is just the first of 2 burns that second stage will do. The next one will really raise that apogee up to about 35,000 kilometers, where the geo belt is. Sawyer, how was launch?
Oh, it was spectacular. What was interesting about this one is normally there's a little bit of a sound delay. Today, it hit quick. Within a matter of seconds of seeing it, you heard it, and you definitely felt this one. It went into the clouds, as I'm sure you saw very quickly, but packed a punch all the way through launch.
Yeah. No kidding. Yeah, crazy stats that we're coming up on because this was the 398th launch of Falcon 9. So by the end of the week, they'll be at launch number 400. The 399 number Sawyer was saying was missions. So there is that one discrepancy between launch and missions.
Yeah, we don't talk about that one.
But there we have it. That is 3 launches down for SpaceX in the last 24 hours, and the one to go tomorrow. That is every single one of SpaceX's Falcon launch pads has had a launch in the last 24 hours. Anonymous with a store message that I don't want to read, saying that a certain ship is the best ship, but I mean, we all know that's just not true. But thank you for getting stuff from the store. I hope you enjoy your Flight 6 patch. And then Tuttle Gaming became a PadRad member. Welcome to our membership program. Let's see. People were wondering, was that an abnormal amount of water on the drone ship deck? No, I think that was totally normal.
Yeah, for the last few, I say few landings, referring to probably the last year or so of landing operations, it seems like in order to reduce the amount of wear and tear on the drone ships, they've been using a lot of water. And that is good. Like we've seen, for example, SpaceX use that for Starship. When they do the landing burn of the booster, right, at Starbase, they also work on the deluge. Like that deluge is activated, and that protects the base of the launch pad from super heavy landing burn. So it makes sense to also do that with the drone ships to reduce the tear and wear, and that allows them to be able to turn around those drone ships a lot faster.
Yeah. Let's see. A Ninja Guy Dan is wondering, what is the purpose of the vent adjacent to the Merlin vacuum engine? Is that where all the ice chunks come from? That's a question for Alex for sure.
Yeah, the MVAC engine has 3 bleed lines on each side, and that's one of them that you see there. That's the oxygen bleed line. Controls a lot of the operations with the gas generator and things like that on the engine. That is totally normal that you see there. It's not a leak or anything. That's part of the operation of the engine. There's a bunch of other engines that do that. That they have either active bleed lines as they are running, or either before or after they have been operated. And so that is completely normal. In fact, you may see at stage separation that it's connected to one of those flappy wires. You see those wires and you may think that's probably like cables to connect the two stages or something like that, data cables or something. They are not. They're just pipes to be able to make that venting exit the second stage engine, right? And then go through those pipes outside of the intrastage when the two stages are mated together. Yeah.
And here we
So
have
we're gonna have
replays on the left. That's from Fleet Cam. And
Yep.
this is kind of funny. You can see still a bunch of boosters at port. It looks like, is it just one? Looks like they may have gotten rid of 2 of them back to Hangar X. And through the clouds. This is from, actually, I don't know what cam. I don't know the cams as well as the Cape people do.
This is from the hut, one of the
Okay.
robots. We have 3 there. Gage is saying it's the third one.
Let's see, what did Gage say this one is? This I do love watching vehicles go through the clouds. I think it's cool, but if you're there, it's not fun.
This is the second one. Is this auto track? Looks like it is. That's auto track engaging. And it's about to lose it through the clouds. You'll see. And goodbye.
And here's Sawyer's cam.
Also lost it to the clouds, unfortunately.
Yeah, that was a phenomenal.
Hey, the clouds make tracking hard. Ooh, is that a crawler moving?
Yeah, it's moving out of the BAV because they're doing now. So long story here, but that crawler moved mobile launcher 1 from LC-39B to the VAV to prepare for Artemis 2. NASA today said that they are moving the first 2 segments, so the aft segments of the 2 solar rocket boosters of the SLS rocket, they are being moved to the mobile launcher, and so they need to get the crawler out of the way for that kind of operation. So yeah.
Makes sense. Let's see. Mary's wondering, been watching, or with the storm message saying, been watching these. You guys really sparked my interest in spaceflight. Thank you. No, thank you for your support. Hopefully you enjoy your Flight 6 patch. Let's see. People are wondering when payload separation is. Payload separation is at T plus 33 minutes. Relight of that second MVAC burn is at T plus 26 minutes and 41 seconds, but we will not be staying live for that. that will be it for today. Of course, we have a lot of content coming up. We have a countdown to launch this afternoon, which I believe that will be Alex, Adrian, and Ryan on. And then, of course, tomorrow we have the stakeout stream, which will begin at 4 a.m. Central, and then that launch stream, which will begin at 12:30. So make sure you tune into all of those. But first, I want to thank Sawyer. Sawyer, thank you for going out and bringing us those live views today.
My absolute pleasure. I know a lot of people are down at Starbase, but gotta give Falcon some love.
Yeah, for sure. Falcon deserves a lot of love, and helping with that love was Alejandro. Alex, thank you as always.
It's been a pleasure, and hopefully I'll see you all on Countdown to Launch later today.
Yep, and then Carson was in the background operating today's stream. Thank you, Carson. And Gage was helping out with tracking. Again, make sure you tune into all of our Starship coverage, countdown to launch this afternoon, Starship streams tomorrow. But with that, I've been your host for today's mission. Thank you all very much for joining. And let's not forget, the most exciting launch is still to come. Have a good one, everyone.
And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Rolling up. Roger, roger, planet.
Water towers fly! Yes! Payload down to nominal.
Flight outside ST off. Bring in ST off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
What is it?
Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You good? We don't need any more of these.